as soon as I had the books, I had to start reading them. And I never went back to my aunt Tarakini because I was so engrossed, engaged, riveted by the Gita. I was like, my goodness, why has nobody made me read this book before? And how wonderful is its philosophy for just living life. And children, imagine if they were equipped with this kind of worldview when they were children, life would become so much easier, particularly against the kind of backdrop we live in today. It's so competitive and so like hustle, 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 this capitalistic culture, and always looking outwards to gain stuff, to buy material things, and never looking in rich outer life, very poor inner life. And if that could be reversed, how if as we build our external resources, or why don't we build our internal resources? And I felt that the Gita was the best way to build your internal resources because it was compact, it was very succinct, it was a conversation between friends, and it was a situation that I mean, it's not a generally sitting in the forest and talking. There was a war to be fought, very fraught. So when Vatsala called me back a month later saying, okay, you've had your month. Now, if you tell me it's a terrible book or it's not meant for children or there's some things about it that you're not comfortable with, I'll let you go. What do you think? Then she's like, and I was like, but my God. So she's like, okay, fine, bye, do it. She put the phone down. She didn't know very much about it either. She was just, so that's how the Gita came out. And it was such a joy to write. I felt so validated by what Krishna said in the Gita, because some of those things I had felt always, but nobody would validate me. People would say competition is the thing. And the thing is, I had always topped things and I had always done well. So I had begun to think, okay, that's the way you have to compete, but always with great reluctance, somehow like this unsettled stomach whenever I was going for a competition. But that I was told was just, nerves. But I began to realize, no, I don't like it. I don't like this idea of one being bigger than the other, being judged constantly. So those kinds of things. And yeah, it was so transformative for me, Rashmi, just to research the Gita. Writing that book just changed my outlook.
Yeah, Rupa, here I want to ask you a very basic question, maybe for you, but I'm very curious. The Gita, the philosophies of life, which we see actually open layers and metaphors as we grow older.
Yeah.
Now, you are not as young as those little kids who are going to read it. How do you dissect what you have learned and go into that element to connect to those kids to make them want to listen to you? Obviously, it's storytelling that will help. But
Mm.
how do you kind of dissect those philosophies? Because they are the philosophies of life itself.
Yeah.
So, how did you do that? For me, that was the curious element because today, when I do classes with kids, I do ask them questions, tell them next class when you come, you're supposed to get the answer. They do it with a lot of curiosity. Many of them go straight to Google right
Yeah.
there and they get
Yeah.
the answer.
Yeah.
But how did you sit down to actually dissect it? Because we have experienced life, so we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
see it
Yeah.
reflected, but
Yeah.
they haven't. For
Yeah.
them to understand it, how did you manage to dissect it for yourself first?
Yeah. See, the thing was, I realized quite early on that in the research that really Kurukshetra is everything is a metaphor in the Gita. You don't have to be only a warrior for that to make sense to you or be relevant to you. Or if you look at it another way, we are all warriors. We are all every day fighting wars. Sometimes like actual physical wars against the administration or against some person who's making our life difficult, but mostly battles within ourselves about what's the right thing to do in this situation, what is the wrong thing to do. Should I do the convenient thing which will make me cool and make me conform and not make me stand out, or should I do the difficult thing which I feel in my heart is right but which will set me apart as some kind of outlier and lose me this company of my friends and maybe Instagram likes or whatever, so it will lose me all of that. How much am I willing to go by my own gut? So these are the kind of battles we are fighting every day. Once that idea came into my head, I could think back to the time when I was a child, and it's far more difficult for a child because children really want to conform. They do not want to stick out. And so belonging becomes everything because we know of all of us have been in school. See, the advantage of writing for children is that we have all been children once. So if we just are able to think back to that time, how difficult it is when you are somewhat different from your peers, even maybe physically, mannerisms or anything, how difficult it is to be accepted. If you think differently and don't go along with what the group as a whole decides, even more difficult to keep your friends or to belong. So in that kind of situation, it seemed to me that Arjuna's act of collapsing to the floor of the chariot when he realized, oh my God, this is the enormity of what I'm actually going to attempt, is knowing full well that everybody's eyes were on him, even his own people's eyes, and I can't call them the enemy, but the opposition's eyes were on him. He did not hesitate for a minute to let his true feelings show. He didn't care. He put on the blinkers. He doesn't care what the world thinks, this or that. These guys, they are depending on me. These guys are hoping that I walk away from the battlefield. But neither of them mattered. In that moment, he was willing to stop everything he was doing and go inside and inquire, because really Krishna is only his own higher self, his best friend. So he was able to have that conversation. So for me, suddenly it stood out as the most fearless act. To everybody else, it seemed like a fearful act. He had collapsed. He was looking pathetic on the floor of the chariot. But to be able to not care about the opinions of people and not proceed in something which has been already decided, you're already on the battlefield, but you say, I will not take a step further until I have resolved the conflict in my head, seemed to me that the thing that every child, every human should be able to do, should have the strength to be able to do that. How do we get the strength, the moral courage to be able to say, I will not do it until I have resolved it in my head? Is when we have a friend that we can depend on, who always has our back, who knows what's best for us. And that friend cannot be suddenly WhatsApped. It has to, he or she or it lives inside of you. And if you're able to develop the strongest relationship and the best friendship with that person, with your own higher self, the battlefield becomes easy. Like, the war is going to be hard. There are going to be consequences. All that will not change. But you can go out and do your part with peace in your heart and in your mind, like Arjuna did by the end of the Gita. So once I knew that, I said, this is a lesson. Now, how do we use language and setting and thing to make it palatable to children, to make it interesting for them? So all the commentaries and everything that I had read, I realized went shloka by shloka. And by the time I reached this 10th, I have forgotten what, because they don't actually, there's no logical flow many times. It just jumps from one thing to another, because a lot of it is left to the interpretation of the reader. Now, the children cannot be expected to do that interpretation. So we have to curate it a little bit. The writer has to curate it. And luckily for me, like, Vatsala had already taught me so much that no biases, your biases shouldn't come out. You just report what was said. So I did that. I made us the whole story. I did not bring in every shloka. I brought in the gist. And I didn't want the children to ever forget that they were engaging with a classical text of great value and which has been revered for centuries, millennia in this land. So I didn't want to suddenly Arjuna calling Krishna, dude, bro, what should we do? I didn't want it to become that level also. It should be, it's a classical text. You should be aware of it. So I used a little classical English in those parts. That was my Amatsra Katha. Like, that kind of language came in there. And then, but again, I said, if I continue in this vein, the children might lose interest. So I introduced a little sub-chapter after every chapter where I used contemporary colloquial language. And that was me. That was not Krishna. That was me talking to the kids directly. Think about it. What can you gain from this? I picked one lesson from each and put it out. So there are so many other lessons, so many other layers, but that will keep. They can come to it slowly as they grow up. But if I can intrigue them, if I can engage them, that it's not say that it has some value, then they will be more open to engaging with it as they grow up. Otherwise, if they never come across it, they would be like me, intimidated by it and say, oh, whatever, man, it's too difficult. I don't want to go there. And then what happens? You get seduced by other philosophies and who are actually saying the same thing in different words. So the Gita is very compact, very holistic. It has everything in it, really. Any question that you want, is answered there. Of course, I'm a fan, so I talk like that. But I really feel it's true. Of course, the Gita speaks differently to different people and everyone has their own version. But for me, it felt like the book of answers for everything. So in that second subchapter, I talk to them and pick up examples from their life and make it relevant to them. So then when they go back and read the chapter again and it's classical, some correlation happens, only so that they would treat it as a text and they would say it came out of India. And so they feel that we have already thought about these things. We have come up with answers. It's not only other philosophies and maybe Western philosophies. I'm sorry to keep saying Western, but that's what we are exposed to a lot. Any English speaking child in India is exposed to Western philosophies and Western thoughts a lot. So that is, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but you must know that here also people have already thought about it many years ago, have come up with similar answers. And then with that confidence, when you engage with the West or any other philosophy, you're able to take the best of that as well with respect. You're able to truly respect, oh my God, same thing. Ours also say that. But if you don't have those roots, you're going to go and say, oh, our fellows never came. They only came up with some fuddy-duddy stuff. And these guys are the cool ones. So the same thing that happened to me when I was young, I don't want that to happen again. So that's how I did it, I think. I spoke to the children directly in the intervening chapters.